Next item on the agenda is the Housing Management Board update. Progress to date. That the report be received, so it's moved by Vicky Buck and seconded by Glenn Livingston. Vicky.
Just so very briefly, obviously the Housing Management Board has done a huge amount of work on this and has been faced, I think, with two major challenges. One, to make the council's social housing unit financially sustainable, and secondly, to make the proposed CHIP community housing provider also financially sustainable, and at the same time to provide a really good standard for tenants and to ensure that we can deliver additional housing both within the council's levels of service and additional beyond that. The process has been much longer than we would have anticipated, but I think we've actually come up with a really good solution, and you'll see that there is a supplementary report in Public Excluded as well, which gives you all the numbers on how this works and the fact that it does work, which I find the most reassuring of the work that's been going on. So Councillors Turner and Livingston and Lonsdale, and a lot of staff time, a huge amount of staff time from Mary and Carolyn and many others, as well as some very good advice from Deloitte's and Ben from, and I'm going to get the legal firm wrong, Anderson Lloyd, which has gotten us to the point where we are now meeting with the potential trustees of the CHIP, except for one who's currently overseas.
Could I acknowledge Vicky's work in this turn, that of my colleagues and all the staff? This has been a big piece of work, and I think we can safely say that social housing is not going down the drain. There is a plan, and that the financial aspect of the plan is based on conservative projections. So I feel happy with that. I think sometimes when we have feisty debate, it comes about because of a lag in information. Some of us are at one place with it, others at another. So we might want to bear that in mind when we come to the PX parts of the meeting later today.
Yep, Paul and then Andrew.
Yeah, I also recognise actually the work that Vicky's done and the other board members. I think the point being, and just to capture that in probably one sentence, we cannot do nothing. This is not a do nothing situation. We have to do something, and this is the work of the Housing Management Board to do that something that needs to be done.
Yep. Andrew and then Ali.
Yeah, I'd like to echo the comments that have been made by other councillors. There's certainly a lot of work has gone into this. I recognise the contribution that Vicky's made by putting this idea together in the beginning and getting the ball rolling. The other members of the Housing Management Board who've attended a large number of meetings, often quite early in the morning, and often meetings involving quite technical reports and a lot of financial information, and need to get a lot of matters on the same table at the same time, and that really has been one of the challenges with this. I'd also like to acknowledge the amazing amount of work that's been done by staff in terms of gathering that information together in a way that is easily understood by both the members of the Housing Management Board and the external members who will form part of the community housing provider. But just understanding this, getting our heads around it, has been quite a challenge because of the quantity and the technical nature of the information. But where we've ended up is with a situation that sees the housing fund become financially sustainable, which is an achievement in itself, and we've arrived at a point where we can now see for a long period into the future some good social and economic outcomes for the provision of social housing in Christchurch, and that's an achievement that must not be underestimated.
Ali?
I had a question, Albany. Is that all right? Page 469, so the Housing Management Board update for the 8th of September. It does relate to something I think is in PX, but it's just the update, the most recent update at the end of the PX report. There's just some information in this update, the 8th of September, that isn't consistent with the information in the 22nd of September Housing Management Board update.
Can we deal with that in PX then? Because, I mean, it's in PX for a reason.
Yes, but if we approve this, it's contrary to what is in the 22nd of September.
We're only receiving it.
So receiving it is not acknowledging it as being correct?
We could deal with that in PX.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so I have a motion. Oh, sorry, Raf.
Yeah, hi. In item 2.4, it says here, agree that 50 million of the $50 million the council has agreed to put into the community housing provider, 45 million will be by way of a loan and 5 million as equity. I was under the impression we were transferring land, or is that something different?
So the resolution of the council is that we would transfer to the community housing provider 50 million from the current ring-fenced social housing.
So 50 million cash?
No, not cash. No cash.
50 million what?
50 million of land and or other assets that's currently within social housing. The point of the 45 million being by way of potential loan is that all along this pathway, recognising that everything in social housing can change, including the IRRs, or that because we're looking a long way ahead, everything is possible, it can possibly change. What we've tried to do is create, as you do when you're setting something up new, all of the possible things that could go wrong and plan for them. So all along the way we've left gates. So for example, because this is a charitable trust, if it was wound up, then the $50 million worth of assets which would have been built additional social housing would go back to charitable purposes, which doesn't include the council. Because the council's putting in the $50 million worth of land and or other assets from the social housing portfolio, in the event that anything happens in 5, 8, 10 years' time, 15 years' time, the equity that the council has put in would be returned to the council. So that's the point of making it a loan that's repayable only in the event that it gets wound up. So it's to protect the council.
That doesn't make sense. So you're transferring the land, but you're
but we're
then taking a
valuing
loan
it
against the land?
No, so we're valuing it at its market value, such that in the event that anything happens to the trust, and it is required under the Charities Act to redistribute any profits that it's got, with any assets that it has, which may be sizable, that the council gets back what it's put in, so that the council's interest is protected at every possible step. We're not putting cash, there is no cash going in.
I think that the wording of it, $50 million, it should have said that the $50 million worth of assets, that its agreed value will be protected by way of that being a loan to the thing. I think that this is the resolution that the Housing Management Board passed in relation to how the lease agreement is going to be written up. So I think that your point can be resolved in the way that actual lease agreement is actually worded.
There are two components. One is the lease agreement and the other is the transfer of some assets from the housing portfolio. Land where possible, but because there may not be $50 million worth of empty land, some of it may be housing. This is aimed at protecting that council value of investment into the chip. So
in
that the council can't lose.
Have we delegated, I know we've delegated the decision making, but have we delegated the, if you were to go outside what we understood? We haven't delegated the ability of you to change the $50 million worth of assets to
the 50 million
cash.
No.
So if it were cash, it would have to come back to council.
It's not
It says the 5 million remained as equity, so that's cash. I mean, maybe this needs a different explanation.
So it's the wording of the lease that probably needs to reflect I think this is originally sort of a slightly amateur way of writing what's trying to protect by way of making it a loan rather than making it an equity investment in the
so originally it was all just going straight into the chip, right? So the 50 million of assets was going straight into the chip. It was a transfer. And this is an additional protection for council, such that when a charity, because this is a charitable trust, such that when it winds up, because we couldn't give that back to the council in that event, this allows for the return of that value of the asset that is transferred. If we did it with the whole 50 million, it gives the CHIP no bank balance in order to be able to go and do mortgages or whatever. So it's actually an additional protection for the council.
Well, I'm going to need some more info on that.
Well, the council resolution is actually to transfer, full stop, $50 million worth of assets from the Social Housing Fund. This is the CHIP, or the Housing Management Board, being very conservative with the council's assets and making sure that the value of those assets comes back in the event that the CHIP is ever wound up.
I think that the intention is clear from that, but the wording probably is a little bit...
The wording is actually worded legally by the people in the documents. This is just our report back.
Yeah, but this won't be the wording of the lease agreement itself. It's what it's going to actually agree to do. Pauline.
I'm just wondering if there's a typo in the bullet point above that one. 2.4, the third bullet point down, inside the brackets, approximately. Should that be $11 million a year? You're at 14.1 minus the 3.1. Is that how you get...
Sorry, I have to find the report. What number are you on, Pauline?
So it's page 469, 2.4, third bullet point down, last line, inside the brackets. Should it be 11?
Minus the... sorry.
So rental income's 14.1
yes,
minus the maintenance
yes, except
cost.
it doesn't refer to that. So
it's not connected to that?
No, it's not connected. That should be different paragraph. Sorry. The council captures the benefit of the cheaper operating model of the CHIP. There is a sizable cost in being in this building and in using our IT system, and this means that the CHIP and the council both capture that benefit.
Okay. And that's a $1 million.
It's about $1 million a year.
Benefit, and it's not connected to the other two figures.
Sorry.
Thank you.
All right. Raf,
one other
and
question.
then Jimmy.
So on item 2.5, in terms of the IRS, it seems to me that the viability of this depends on a reasonable level of IRS. And what guarantees do we have around that?
Like all government policy, there is no lifetime guarantee that comes with them. The modelling that you'll see later has been done on a 5% only uptake of IRS each year, and you'll see that in the public excluded. It's a very conservative figure, given that our usual turnover of tenants is around 11 to 12% per annum. So it's been done by Deloitte. It's very conservative modelling. And it doesn't take into account any potential other benefits that the CHIP will also capture.
All right. Jimmy?
Sorry. Regarding to legal advice, the 2.2 on page 469, the fourth bullet point, enable flexibility for partners to exit from the community housing provider. They have any term, how many years those partners, this kind of commitment, am I right?
There's an initial term for the community housing provider for the lease.
Yes.
And struggling, I think it's 10, in order, 10.
Years.
Okay. And then there is capacity,
yes,
and I think annually for any partner to exit. So that also responds to Raf's questions. If the IRS disappears, or if a change of government allows the council to pick up the IRS, the council can determine that it wants to bring social housing back in terms of tenancy management, because remember, it's still owning all of the social housing that it's leasing. So what we've tried to do is make sure, as you normally do when you're setting up a new company, that you anticipate all of the sort of prenuptial agreements and do them at the time when there is no enmity involved.
You know, one partner exit, whether the other partner can join or not.
One partner,
Yeah.
other partners can exit.
Yes.
Yes, there is capacity for that, and there's capacity for the council to exit.
Yes.
So we've tried to make this as flexible as possible for the council, while giving the CHIP the capacity to become financially viable for itself and for the council.
Okay, thank you.
Ali?
When can we see the trustees?
When the trustees have actually, probably at the next meeting, I would think.
Thank you.
Or, this has actually been delegated at a previous council meeting to the Housing Management
I
Board,
understand that.
but probably at the next council meeting, I'm thinking. Is that fair, Mary? Yeah, yeah, I'm getting a nod.
All right. Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. The Metropolitan